Hello, I'm Lauren Ohayon from Restore Your Core, and today I want to talk about how the pelvic floor changes or can change during the menopause transition and then post-menopause. So a few things are happening in your body as you are making your way towards menopause. As you are making your way towards menopause, your hormones begin to change pretty significantly. They go through a fluctuation as progesterone and estrogen begin their kind of decline, incline, decline, eventually really declining once you are in menopause. But so for those years leading up to menopause, a lot of what people are experiencing in their body can be things like urinary tract infections and or a lot of mood and or gut experiences. As people are moving more into menopause, because estrogen is now really just in a state of decline and it's no longer kind of going through some peaks and valleys, it's just going to be steadily declining. The severity, if that's a good word to use, of symptoms begins to change. The kind of energy of the symptoms begins to change. And what we see, because estrogen supports your immune system, it supports your heart, it supports bone health, it supports collagen production, so your skin, it supports tissues, so many tissues in your body. I think I said it supports your immune system as well. So it is supporting a multitude of systems in your body. And then a lot of those types of systems are in existence in your pelvic floor. So a lot of people have never heard of GSM, which is genitourinary symptoms or syndrome. I hear it interchanged, syndrome of menopause, which is where now we're talking about symptoms that are very specific to being in menopause that are happening in your pelvic floor, like it can be so many things, like UTI, like painful intercourse, like dry vaginal atrophy or your vagina feeling very dry. Like what happens for some people is their labia minora, starts to disappear and can completely disappear for some people. There's something called clitoral phimosis, where the clitoris kind of adheres itself to the hood of the clitoris. There is a lot of dryness, less lubrication, less libido, incontinence. Suddenly your bladder feels very active and you need to urinate all the time. And it can literally feel like, and low back pain and hip pain, joint pain, especially around the pelvis. And it can literally feel like you woke up in a new body from one day to the next. It can be incredibly debilitating. The thing is that us females, specifically if you identify like as a woman and you've faced a lot of these cultural women-based norms, is that we are not, here in the West at least, we're not handed authority in menopause, which we really should be. What we're handed is just happens when you get older, you start to disappear anyway, you become irrelevant. So we absorb, a lot of us women absorb those kind of cultural norms and we don't feel empowered to go seek help. So let's say most of our life leading up to our 50s, we didn't have a lot of connection to our pelvic floor. We didn't feel entitled to ask about pleasure. We felt embarrassed or squeamish to ask our doctors about issues we might be feeling in our pelvic floor or around pleasure, libido, arousal, all of those things. Now, as we're kind of hitting menopause, it doesn't just get better for most people. Most people are still embarrassed to ask, squeamish, and they just start to see their pelvic floor as like a nuisance, which is unfortunate because the nuisance of it, right? It's not a nuisance. It is a very vital body part that can remain vital even as you are going through menopause. There is no need to submit to these ideals and ideas that, the aging process is a process of decline. Yes, there is a decline in your estrogen, but there is so much you can do to support your pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor thrives in a space of blood flow, and blood flow happens with use and movement. So finding, as a movement teacher, it's my kind of role and job. I feel called to share with you that there are many ways to support your pelvic floor. There are many, many types of supplements and hormones and all those other things that you can be doing. From a movement perspective, you deserve to lubricate and hydrate the tissues of your pelvic floor. And what better way to do that than with movement? Also, if you have been in a paradigm where you have not been encouraged and instructed to be connected to your pelvic floor and to kind of have a map to this region of your body, to kind of be familiar and to feel it and to notice it and to experience your pelvic floor as the super important structure that it is, the way you might feel your arm doing this, the way you might feel your core releasing and tensing. Your pelvic floor does all these things as well. Your pelvic floor supports you as you walk. Your pelvic floor supports your spine to be upright. Your pelvic floor supports your glutes, your psoas, your vagus nerve. Your pelvic floor is a support system to your digestion and to your gut. It's a support to your breathing, your heart, your ribs. Your pelvic floor is such an important part of your very being. And if you have not been called to be in your pelvic floor, that's okay. You can start now. And you can start by doing practices that foster more awareness to the pelvis, and then foster awareness to the pelvic floor via connection with your core, via connection with your breath. And you can also do practices, movement practices that really support whatever kind of movement you're doing, but that really support motion and lotion and lubrication and hydration of all of these tissues, rather than kind of, the problem is, as we go into all of this estrogen decline, we become less invested in helping ourselves and moving, and we become a little bit more, becomes easier just to be like, oh, I think I'll just lay down, or I think I'll just rest, or this is what's happening anyway. I might as well just like surrender, right? It's easy to surrender to it, but you don't have to. And not surrendering to it gives you this opportunity to actually meet yourself at the gates of menopause with a more vibrant pelvic floor, both in your connection to it and like actually physiologically, right? Like, so you can show up at the gates, or even if you're post-menopause, and really give your pelvic floor this more enhanced, embodied, enlivened experience, which I do believe you deserve. And, you know, the problems in the pelvic floor that come with menopause can get even worse and worse and worse. I don't want to fearmonger you, but, you know, people start getting prolapse, where before maybe they ran and they were leaking. They can't even make it to their front door before they're urinating. They're having incontinence. They're needing pads, right? So things can get worse if we are not tending to the garden of our pelvic floor. And tending to the garden of our pelvic floor, even again, if you start taking all of the more medicalized routes of support, and tending to the garden of your pelvic floor can only create a much better system that you're working with. Again, you are working, when you are working with movement and connection and your nervous system and embodiment and enhancement, you are working with blood flow. You're working with your internal system to awaken and be revitalized and to be there to meet menopause with you, as opposed to this kind of dark, abandoned shadow state that everyone expects it to be in, and therefore everyone just kind of accepts. You don't have to be in that. And I can tell you, because I have worked with, well, I'm 48 right now, and I have worked with, so I'm at the gates, and I have worked with thousands of people at the gates, through the gates, on the other side of it, who feel incredibly connected to the tissues of their pelvic floor, to their pleasure, to their function, to how the pelvic floor integrates with the core, the breath, the ribs, the spine. Like the core, your pelvic floor doesn't have to just go into the graveyard when you're 50. That's ridiculous. It can be just as alive to you as your arm, the way you're feeling your arm and you're moving your arm and you're sensing your arm and you know exactly what to do with your fingers when you want to do something with your fingers. That relationship is completely possible inside your pelvic floor, and it can only support and benefit you as you are moving into, or if you are already in menopause. Like, you are going to have a much more powerful garden, so to speak, when you have tended to the entire root system. You can't just come in and start dumping water on it, right? Like, again, you want to take all those supplements and do all those things. That's fine. But they don't take care of the internal environment the way movement can. And they certainly don't take care of the nervous system, which is a huge part of pelvic health, the way movement can. So you have so many tools at like your fingertips that maybe your provider is not going to tell you about, but I'm telling you about, to help walk you through these gates that are these beautiful gates that we should be gaining authority and not giving our authority away to these like outdated models of care for women. I hope you found this helpful. I hope I've made my point that menopause absolutely can affect the pelvic floor. It happens to like 1 in 2 women, basically. It happens to almost everybody in some way. And being embarrassed or ashamed about it is okay. That's your reaction. But there is so much you can do. You can go get help. You can do like stay vital in your pelvic floor. It doesn't need to, because you're 50, you're young. 50, 60, you're young still. There's a lot of life to be doing. And having your pelvic floor in its most functional state possible can only help all of you. Thank you so much for paying attention and watching this video.